and welcome back to the Tales of the Uncle Tom and White Devil.
Oh, you can't say that. That's racist.
Yeah, I know.
You can't
Well,
say it out loud. You can just have it in words. If you have it
look,
in
I'm
words,
sorry for
it
calling you a
counts.
White Devil, but what else am I supposed to call you?
I know. God, man. You should just call me, graham cracker or something. You know what I
I
mean?
mean, has anyone in your life actually called you a White Devil? Because people have
No.
called me Uncle Tom.
Really?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Why?
Because I'm half black.
What? What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're full of it.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
I don't believe it. I don't
I'm
believe
blacker than Sean King.
it. Who the fuck is Sean King?
Ever heard of him?
No.
Type in Sean King.
What? Sean King. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Little sidebar moment here. Sean King. Sean King. Wait, that guy's black?
Supposedly.
No, you're lying.
No. I don't think that he's actually black. I'm saying that he thinks he's black.
Oh.
Another. Yeah. Apparently, he's a decent writer, so black people are like, all right. And he's a bit of a black activist. Have you heard? There was this woman who claimed that she was raped by a police officer, and then they released the body cam footage, and it turned out not to be true.
Nah.
Well, the reason why it was such a big deal, except for you hearing about it, was because of Sean King. Sean King reported that, police officers just be beating up our black women and whatnot. Turns out she was lying.
You know what? Oh, you know what? Let's save our next topic for afterwards. Let's go right into the leftist racial conspiracy. Because since we kind of started off with talking about that. So, go ahead and give me your give me your idea behind this, because you have a lot more experience with this than I do.
I have a bit of experience. So here's the idea. Leftists have their own conspiracies. In a previous episode, I mentioned one, but here's another more, I guess, popular but more hidden one.
Elaborate.
Well, I'm working on that.
Oh, okay. Dead air.
Okay.
Dead air.
All right, thanks.
Dead air.
So,
Dead air.
Originally, the United States was created by Europeans.
Correct.
It was kind of the dumping ground for people who didn't want to be persecuted by the government, people who basically owed money to somebody, and the company bought the debt, and they would send them here to die, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of Irish people.
Yeah.
Anyways, so the United States was essentially started for white people.
Mm-hmm.
And this premise is the core of the white supremacy theory that the left holds, and is kind of dictating their policies. Not a lot of people realize this, but it's actually something that has been around since 1966, I think. Black Power movement.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah, like the Black Panthers and shit like that.
Yeah. If you're ever curious about that, look up Dr. Derek Bell, Harvard University. The professor of Barack Obama. Like, I think his adjunct professor or whatever. Okay. And actually, supposedly, he started his presidential campaign from his home. I don't know if that's true. It's just something people say. Mm-hmm. But anyways, so because this country was started by white people, its institutions are based on the idea that it's supposed to benefit white people and no one else.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that is built in this country is started from that core, that seed, if you will, the seed of whiteness. And anything that produced from that seed that wasn't white didn't flourish as well as a white person could have. Now, eventually, the mechanisms of this sort of racism machine went into full speed, right?
Yeah.
That would be slavery. So when the country first started, slavery wasn't really a thing. Then it started going.
Well,
the country, meaning the colonization when it first started, it didn't really.
Well,
Slavery
there were
wasn't there.
slaves back then. Slavery wasn't abolished by the British in America until the Revolutionary War. So there was slavery, but slavery wasn't nearly as big as it was until the early 19th century with the invention of the cotton gin. But before that, it was like there were slaves, but not really that many.
You are very wrong. Do you know how many slaves were ever imported to the United States?
I think it was like it was about 1 million. Well, in total, by like 1865, I think it was 1 million slaves in America.
Less than that, actually.
Yeah, it was like
More-
800,000, give or take. Yeah.
More slaves actually went to the south of the United States, like the South
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
Like 2 million slaves went there.
Yeah,
and
but pre-cotton gin, there was about 100,000 slaves in America. Post-cotton gin, again, we get by the Civil War, we were up to around 800,000 slaves. So before the cotton gin, slavery wasn't really a thing here. I mean, it was, but it wasn't as important.
I definitely don't think I can agree with that, but it doesn't really matter. The point of the matter is that the United States was made for white people. Okay.
Yes,
so
correct.
The height of the power would be during slavery, and we can both understand that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the height of the power is during slavery, and even though there was this war for basically freeing the slaves, under this theory, the war wasn't necessarily for freeing the slaves. That was just something that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, and ever since, the United States has been an ism that no one's manning the helm for.
Can you rephrase?
Today,
Can you say that last sentence one more time? You cut out on that.
Okay. The United States has been an engine without a pilot of racism. So there is racism in the system. Very few people are manning the engines actively, consciously.
Mm-hmm.
The racism is invisible. It doesn't necessarily need to be anything called clans racism.
Mm-hmm.
It just has to be sort of the idea of racism. Like, did that person cut me off because I'm black? Like, that's invisible racism, and
Mm-hmm.
that's because the system was originally made by white people.
Correct.
And that's white supremacy.
See, okay. So I'm assuming we're talking about modern day racism versus 1950s racism, or like 1950s racism was straight up, boy, you better get down here or whatever,
Yeah.
But
So
modern day racism is a lot more like, hey, I'm driving down the street and there's a car of black people. Yeah, I'm gonna roll up my window. Right?
Yeah, that's essentially correct. Although
Yes.
that would be more. Here's the kicker: the person you're talking about, are they white, Asian, or Mexican?
Well, let's just go with white in my situation because that's more relevant.
Then it would be racist.
Yeah, but if the person was, let's say, if the person was Asian, it would still be racist.
Incorrect. Under the theory of white supremacy, there's also a component called power plus privilege, racism.
I've heard of this.
Okay. Under this theory of white supremacy, only those people with institutional power, meaning the institution of white people, have the power to be racist. So if you do not have the power to be racist, you can never be racist. Meaning, if you're not white, you'll never be racist. If you are white, you're always going to be racist, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything. You just exist, and you are racist.
Yeah, see, when we get down to things like that, I think it belittles real racism. Like, our racial problem nowadays isn't so much Klansmen gathering in the street. Our racial problem nowadays is people making decisions based on the race of someone else. So, again, like my example, drive by the car and rolling up the window because you don't feel comfortable being in an inner city next to a car full of, black people. Like, that is clearly racist. No matter what race you are. Even if you're Hispanic, Asian.
I'm afraid that's incorrect.
Yeah,
According to this theory, if that's a white person, who the black person... So, under this theory, black people are afraid all the time of white reprisal, white lashback, or white lash. And they are afraid that the white person is going to consider them to be angry black person, and they will call the police, and the police will kill them. So, in
But
this
isn't there
circumstance,
some truth to that part, though? I mean, like, uh, as a if you were, I mean, you being a black person and all,
mhm,
or at least a mixed person, whatever the hell you
mhm,
are, uh,
mhm.
have you ever had that kind of thought? Like, someone's going to judge you purely based on your race?
Mostly black people do this. Yes.
Yes, but I mean, have you ever had the thought? Like, have you had this fear? Like before you
Yes.
became more educated and understood?
Yes. I've most of my life I've lived in fear of what black people would think of me.
Yeah, but what about white people?
No, I don't care.
So what? White people are completely pointless to you?
No, basically, I've always known that white people would judge me off of what I can do.
That ain't 100% true either way, though. I mean, I'm
What do
not
you mean?
sitting here and saying I agree with this whole entire statement that you cannot be racist if you don't have power. But what I am saying is that people generally have a fear that they're going to be judged based on their race. Like, if, again, I'm walking down the street in the city and I see a group of black people who I think they're going to think, oh man, I'm the nerdy white guy walking by. You know? Like, it happens. People think like that. It's not good, but it is the way it is.
So, are you asking me if I have? Maybe I misunderstood the question.
Mm.
As it corresponds to judgment, being judged as a worthy or unworthy.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Okay,
straight up
so-
stereotyping is what I'm more meaning
No, no,
here.
no.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Under that regard, yeah, I've considered it.
Yeah,
That-
yeah. I don't think, like, I disagree with the concept that it takes power to be racist. And I don't like the fact that we've moved on to that whole ideology because I think I think it belittles the fact that there is still racism here in America. And there's racism on every side of the fence. Every single side. I mean, Jesus, have you seen Mexicans and blacks go at it before? It's
Oh yeah, but that's
insane.
see under this theory that is just prejudice because they're not white.
So, okay, well, at least if we're getting two different terms, but I still would rather call racist events racist, not prejudice.
Right, but the problem is that they don't have power, so they can't be racist.
See, that isn't how the definitions were originally intended. So why is it that we're changing these definitions nowadays? It doesn't make
what
much
about
sense.
what about what's his name? Martin Luther King. He said that racism is power plus privilege.
Yeah, but Martin Luther King also said that racism's from every side, isn't it? Didn't he?
Say again, please.
Didn't Martin Luther King also say that racism can be found on every side?
All I know is that Martin Luther King experienced a lot of trauma in his life that was a result of white people abusing black people.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm doing? I'm avoiding answering that question by pointing out that black
But
people
I
suffer.
swear to God, I'm not going to sit here and look for the exact thing, but I remember him saying something like that. Like, this isn't like a new concept or anything. Anybody can be racist. You know? You can be racist if you're white. You can be racist if you're black. You can be racist if you're Hispanic. You can be racist if you're Asian. I mean, geez,
No, I get it.
I find myself more like I don't worry like about black people saying bad things about me, but I'll tell you, Asians, man, they judge you just as quickly as anybody, dude.
Yes, and in reality, I do understand that everyone can be racist, but under the theory of white supremacy, that's not true. See, there are 4 stages.
Mhm.
And there's the institution, there's the system, the systematic racism, there's institutional racism, there's social racism, and there's personal racism. Personal racism doesn't happen so much anymore,
Yeah,
but all the other forms of it
like
do happen.
institutional racism and things like that. Yeah, like
Right, so,
getting
for
pulled
example-
over and attacked by the cops or something.
Right. So one of the things that they'll bring up is the high prison population
Mhm.
that is black.
Yes.
So that's racism.
Yeah, I would agree that that's racism. Yes.
No, it's not racism. They commit crimes. They're in prison for commit crimes. It's not racism.
Yeah, but it's still okay, let's take a look at cocaine, okay? You know you get
Mhm.
more time for doing crack cocaine than you do for snorting cocaine?
Do you know who's responsible for that?
White people.
Black people too. Black people came to the white people and they say, help us. Our neighborhoods are full of crack cocaine.
All right.
And what they do is they beg and they plead. And social workers come in and they say, "Oh, man, look at these families torn apart." And then they go to their congressman, and those congressmen go to their senates, and they make these laws. And these laws punish the people who use crack cocaine. And they forget the people who would be punished would be black people. Do you know that Republicans tried to make sure that this law would not pass? That they tried to vote against it, but it didn't matter, because if they did vote against it, they were seen as unfeeling, uncaring to the black community, because they needed help. They needed help. They needed the government to come in and punish the crack cocaine users.
All right.
White people didn't make that law. Black people did.
So you want to get into history now, man? Because this is an interesting whole concept here about the switch between Democrats and Republicans, because Republicans were the ones that freed the slaves. All right? And I remember earlier you being like, the Civil War had nothing to do with slavery. Believe me, the Civil War had a shit ton to do with slavery. It was the biggest issue at the time. Name one other issue that was more important to start the Civil War than slavery.
Who said that the Civil War had nothing to do with slavery?
You said that. You said it had very little to do with it.
No, I said that many people think that the people who believe in white supremacy theory do not believe that the Civil War had much to do with slavery.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
They believe that slaves were released simply to bolster the northern armies, essentially. There's also components there, but
they were released begrudgingly. But I mean, it wasn't like they didn't want to do it. They've been wanting to abolish slavery for a long time. I mean, this has been a Republican platform from day one when they first formed.
Well, do you know
was
why?
Ending slavery.
It's thanks to the book Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Hey. See how we went circle
Uncle
there?
Tom's Cabin was a widely distributed book in the North. It was one of those books that you would be sitting next to the Bible. It was that popular.
Yeah.
And the sort of belief about the slave, or the noble slave, or I can't remember the actual technical, academic term for it, but the, I guess, Christ-like slave. Ultimately, Uncle Tom suffers terrible abuse and actually cares about his master. The real Uncle Tom actually was this sort of decent fellow that actually helped a lot of people, but it doesn't really matter. The point of the matter is that Uncle Tom's Cabin inspired many sort of people that weren't that close to slavery to romanticize the idea of freeing slaves, and that kind of unified people behind the concept of that being appropriate. Not to say that it was a universal thing, but it unified many people towards that goal. And there were still plenty of people who were like, black people are not equal, which is a fair point, because a majority of people would never run into a freed black man who had been educated.
Yeah.
And if they did run across a slave, then it was a very uneducated person, usually, because they wouldn't be allowed to read or be educated.
Sure.
So the only examples they had were basically, socially, mentally handicapped slaves that had been done that way so they wouldn't, be successful running away from the plantation and stuff. So it's a fair thing to think that even as a Republican, that black people would not be equal. If you have not seen an example of that, and your world is basically, they were slaves a second ago. Why the hell would they be? I've never been a slave. Why would I think that they would ever be my equal?
Yes.
I get that concept. I don't agree with it. I get it, though.
But because of all these bleeding heart Republicans during that time period, the bleeding heart Whigs, or whatever they were called back then, they decided to break off and start this whole different party called the Republicans. And Abraham Lincoln won the election. This pissed off people in the South.
And the North, but yeah.
Yeah, and in the North, yeah, definitely. A lot of people were pissed that he won. So the South straight up broke off from the United States almost within I think it was like within a month of his inauguration. I'm not going to look up all these numbers, so forgive me if I'm a bit wrong.
Sounds real familiar.
Yeah, I know, right? So, Lincoln, as a way to unify the North, did the Emancipation Proclamation. He thought it would actually help get the North up and going and ready, give them a fight, we are done with slavery. We're cutting it off here. We are ending it. This is going to be the main factor we're going to focus on from this point forward.
Well, there's also another component to that, and that would be that the what do you call that? He wanted to have the freed slaves that were freed men and freed slaves that were in the North that had not been fighting to the front lines as extra men because they had been taking terrible losses.
Yeah,
So,
wasn't there that whole movie made about that, Glory or whatever?
yeah, well, I mean, it did touch on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a whole movie about the black company that died in I think Fort Sumter or something. Anyway, they all died.
No,
But
all
anyways,
time.
the whole thing is that they needed to bolster their forces and they had an entire population that wasn't being used. So, yeah, they did free the slaves in the South for the purpose of making sure that they understood that if they won that war and if they could contribute to their winning, that they would be free because they were already free. There was no bargaining. It was essentially, boom, you're free. But the point that I brought up when I was having this discussion with a person who believes in white supremacy is, okay, so I get it. You're saying that Lincoln did a crafty thing and said, I'm going to free the slaves. And the slaves were like, yay. And the free black men were like, yes, I will fight and die for you. Okay, so if what you're saying is true and he was just using them, then why didn't he put them back in chains when he was done? And they're like, oh, no, he did. Because in the Fourth Amendment, it says you can imprison them and you can imprison an American citizen.
What?
Yeah, you can imprison somebody and that would be slave. It authorizes slavery in the form of being a prisoner.
Yeah, because you don't have any rights, correct. But
Yeah,
they
so-
didn't, obviously.
Yeah, well, they tried to in the South. They tried to bust people on minor infractions and put them in jail, and then thus putting them back into slavery. That didn't last, though.
Yeah.
They actually stopped that.
Yeah.
They didn't. The person I was arguing with didn't mention that. I had to look that up myself, and then I also had to look up that basically our interpretation of that is based off of the dialectic change that occurred at some point that changes the phraseology of that term. So back in the day, that was something that they were even confused by, that they thought there was a loophole. But the Congress actually determined that it's not a loophole. That the only way you can become a slave is if you're a slave of essentially a crime.
Mm.
And you can't be sort of parceled out without pay. Like even now, prisoners can't do work without pay.
No, they have to be paid now. Yeah.
Right, because they're not slaves. They're
Yeah.
American citizens who are serving punishment.
Although they pay them shit wages, but yeah.
But regardless, that's where it came from, because they thought they found a loophole to make slaves again, convicting them of crimes, putting them back into slavery. That was just one of those things that had to be worked out in a law that had never been made before. And anyways, under the white supremacist theory, that was all just a clever ruse to free the blacks in order to put them into a new kind of slavery. That would be prisons and debt.
Yeah. Okay, keep go ahead. Keep on going.
Okay, so debt essentially was that a lot of times people didn't think about where the slaves would go, and they basically had nowhere else to go because they were on the plantations. They'd lived there, and that's all they had ever known. Harriet Tubman even spoke about how she would have freed more slaves had they known they were slaves.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I'm not saying they had good conditions, but what would you take, the known or the unknown? I guarantee you.
To be honest, I can see the simplicity of just going to work, coming home, not having to worry about bills, anything like that, you know?
Yeah, and in many of these plantations, they weren't even told that there was a war. So one day the master comes over and says, go, get out of here.
Yeah, a lot of them just basically were paid a quarter to work, a week, do a week of work afterwards,
Right.
And there was a time period like that. I mean, if you look at, like, the railroad workers during the 1870s and the 1880s, it was, like, they would pay black people, like, a tenth of what they were paying white people.
Yeah.
And they were making all the white people the bosses, and it was basically just another form of slavery. But at the same time, as the years went on, things started to get better.
Do you know why?
Because of policy changes, civil rights, things like that.
Incorrect. It's basic capitalism. Okay. So let's just say, for example, slavery's over, right? By the way, slavery had many policies to keep it going. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like slaves couldn't do certain things in the South without permission from the government. Anyways, doesn't matter. But So essentially, all right. So you have this group of people, okay, and they're all getting paid $5 an hour, right? And keep in mind, there's no minimum wage,
Yeah.
right? What keeps you from lowering their wages?
You want to keep them working, or you want to keep them paying for goods too.
Well, no, don't worry about the goods. Just you paying them $5 an hour, or back in the day, they'd pay you for a full day's work. But
Yeah.
let's just say it's $5 a day,
All right.
which would probably be too much, but it doesn't matter. $5 a day.
Mhm.
So why wouldn't I lower it to 4?
I assume that you want to keep employees.
They'd leave, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, what if there's another person who comes along, another group of people who will come and they'll work for $3 an hour,
Well, then you got the Chinese.
or the blacks, and that's what kind of purpose they served
Oh
until
yeah, I
unions.
guess you're a good point. No, that's a good point. Then unions came around about the 20s or so, and kind of
Yeah.
helped
the shit
fix
out of
that. Yeah, beat the shit out of them. You're right.
Yeah.
There was a lot of
That's
mafia
where some of the
stuff
lynchings
going
came
on
from,
there.
too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
lynchings.
They took our
Uh,
jobs. It always starts with that, man.
Well, yeah, essentially.
But I can
Basically-
see how that can come in direct conflict with the whole ideology of, you can't be racist without power, because you're literally talking about two groups of people who have no power fighting against each other, and then the real people who do have power sitting there and taking the money. Like, there's a great story about this, okay?
Hold on a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Did you notice that you said the real people that have power?
Yeah, the company owners, for example. You don't see the
real-
company owners being racist because, heck, they're making money off of it. Like nowadays, you don't see company owners sitting there and saying, let's get rid of all them there Mexicans because they can use them as cheap labor.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's still a
who they
problem.
would? Do you know who they would be or should be using as cheap labor?
No one?
Basically, black, unskilled labor. That's what's being replaced.
Oh, yeah, nowadays, yeah.
Yeah. So
No.
when Mexicans come into the country,
Or
and
they
they
could
work-
just pay their employees more money. There's a good old adage.
we
It's always
already covered that. What happens when you pay your pay your employees too much, your business loses, and you lose your entire business. Okay. Under white supremacy, institutionalized racism is the same. Is the product of white supremacy. It's because the country was made for white people. This is the product. So, what do you think institutional racism is?
if a person is not white, they have it a bit harder when it comes to like justice.
Okay,
Alright.
so give me an example.
Well, okay, let's talk about, your guy wearing, baggy pants and, chains all around his neck going to court. He's going to fare not as well as the person showing up in a suit and tux at court. You know what I mean?
Why do you think that is? Because he's black?
Well, because there's automatically a racism against black culture.
Say again?
There's automatically racism against the black culture.
So you're saying that because this guy shows up to a job interview in a suit and tie,
Mm-hmm.
and I assume he's white, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And because this black individual shows up in, let's just say, ghetto fabulous attire,
Yeah, ghetto fabulous attire.
he won't get the job, but the white guy will because the white guy's white.
No, it will be because of the fact that the white guy goes with the white culture and the black guy goes with black culture.
Okay. So when a black person wears a business suit, that's white culture.
Yes.
Okay.
Business suits are a white culture thing. Will you agree with that or not?
No. Would you say that if a person's wearing saggy pants and ghetto fabulous attire, that is a black person's culture?
Yes.
Okay. No, I would disagree. So the reason I would do that is because that would be basically there's numerous cultures that have adopted this over the years. So it did originate with black culture, but it has expanded since then to multiple cultures.
Mhm.
And to say that a single pair of pants sagging indicates any sort of race is a ridiculous concept. So what kind of suit are we talking about that would indicate a white person? Are we talking about a three-piece?
I don't even know the difference between a three-piece,
No?
two-piece suit. But what I'm saying is, okay, all right, fine.
No cummerbund,
Hey,
bow tie, tie, Windsor knot. What are you talking
about? What the fuck are you even saying? It just sounds
Windsor
like
knot.
all gibberish. What's a Windsor knot?
Okay. Basically, I'm saying that the suits are not white culture. Okay. The white guy is white, and then he's wearing a suit. The black guy is wearing baggy pants. He lost the job interview. What?
What?
Okay. He lost the job interview because he showed up in inappropriate attire.
Okay.
If the white...
I know that's a simple thing to say. Generally, that's the best way to go. It's the safest way to go. But why is it that white culture is considered appropriate and black culture is considered inappropriate?
And what particular thing about black culture?
Let's go into music. Let's talk about rap music. And we're not talking like gangster fabulous rap. Let's just go with Will Smith. Like getting jiggy with it, okay?
I've never ran into a situation where getting jiggy with it was inappropriate to play.
all right. Let me think of something.
How about Jay-Z or maybe Kanye West?
Okay, it's a Hard Knock Life. Jay-Z.
Okay, he says nigger in the song.
Damn it. I don't listen to much rap music, so this is difficult. At least not the non-offensive stuff.
He's also talking about selling drugs on the street. That's also
all right. Which is considered more classy, okay? All right, let me just do this, okay? Hotel California by the Eagles or Kanye West Jesus Walks.
Hotel California because it's older, and you said classy.
Yeah, but Hotel California is about getting stoned off your fucking mind.
Yeah, that's true. What was the Kanye West song?
Jesus Walks.
Okay.
It has a few N-word pops, I'm sure. And a bunch of fucks.
Wait, I'm getting word pops? What?
No, I'm saying... No, I was talking about the, Kanye West. Let me see if I can use a better example, something more about drugs.
So Hotel California is older and more widely accepted, generally, because it's got basically a more melodic feel to it, I suppose, and the lyrics are vague enough that you don't have any idea what they're talking about. Like, literally, in the lyrics, it's talking about a Hotel California, such a lovely place, and, like, you'll never leave. Like, I have no idea what they're talking about. But
or,
it's a
okay, what about,
nice melody.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds?
I have no idea what that is.
It's by the Beatles.
With diamonds?
Yeah, Lucy, it's one of the more famous songs. Have you ever even listened to a Beatles song in your life?
No, I hate the Beatles.
Why?
I just don't like them.
They're one of the best bands ever, man.
They have an annoying voice.
They have an annoying voice. Really?
Yeah. John Lennon, Ringo, and that weird guy on the drums.
Harrison or whatever. But yeah. All right, fair enough. But yeah, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is basically code for LSD. Let me pick something more modern that you would have heard of. Hey, Laura, what's that Third Eye Blind song?
Which one?
The one that he talks really fast in. What? The other big hit that wasn't, I wish that you would step back from that ledge, my friend. What was the other one that was big? Semi-life, something like... So yeah, Semi-Charmed Life, okay? Do you know the song?
I want something else.
Yeah, to get me through this. Okay. Generally, very radio appropriate. Nothing too bad about it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That song's about being a fucking addict.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you be able to tell from the lyrics?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's actually pretty harsh lyrics.
So give me the lyric that indicates that it's a song about addicts.
Okay. Semi-Charmed Life lyrics.
And I want you to pick a rap song, and I'll find the lyric in it that's inappropriate.
Well, I'm trying to think of a rap song that's being a bit more just. I'm packed. I'm holding. I'm smiling. She's living. She's golden, and she lives for me. She owes. She says she lives for me. Ovation. She got her own motivation. She comes around. She goes down on me, and I make her smile. It's like a drug for you. Do you ever want what you want to do coming over you? Keep on smiling. Wow, this is actually really bad. Keep on smiling what we go through. One stop to that rhythm that divides you. And I speak to you like the chorus to the verse. Chop another line like a coda with a curse. And I come on like a freak show takes the stage. We give them the games we play, she said. Alright, that's just a hint. There's literally references to oral sex in exchange for crack.
Yeah, references. None of that is very clear.
Okay. You brought up 3 6 Mafia. I remember there being a 3 6 Mafia drug song. Let me see.
You should check out Slob on My Knob. That's really
I know Slob on My Knob. I know a lot of 3 6 Mafia. Okay. Let me think of something a bit more vague here.
I think your best shot may be Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Okay, alright. Crossroads. Let's use that as an example then. And don't think I'm going to let you get away with first of the month on this one.
Okay. I can go ahead and tell you that most of the songs are about death, or about having to kill people, and regretting that. Wondering about your existence when it was referring to, like, I think, religion.
Yeah.
And then also being willing to kill for your friends.
Look, here's the line. Now tell me what you gonna do when there ain't nowhere to run. Tell me what. When judgment comes for you, when judgment comes for you. Blah, 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 blah. This is pretty much a lot of repeats. When there ain't nowhere to hide, judgment comes for you. Okay, so let's go to the chorus, or the verses here. Let's all bring it in for Wally, Eazy-E, Uncle Charlie, Little Bo, God's got 'em, I'm gonna miss everybody. I only row with Bone, my gang, look to where they lay when playing with destiny. Plays too deep for me to say, Little Lazy came to me, told me if he should decease, well then please, bury me by my grand, and when you can, follow me. God bless you working on a plan to heaven. Follow the Lord all 24/7. God is who we praise, even through the devil's gaze, or even though the devil's all up in my face, but he keeping me safe and in my place. Say grace.
Mm-hmm.
For the case to race with a chance to face the judge, and I'm guessing my soul won't budge, grudge, because there's no mercy for thugs. Oh, what can I do? It's all about our family and how we roll. Can I get a witness? Let it unfold. We living our lives to internal our soul. Pray and we pray, blah, 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 every day. Still we laced, now follow me, roll, stroll. Whether it is tell of his... Man, I cannot speak this language.
That's okay. You can stop speaking. The
Yeah.
reason why they wouldn't play that is because it talks about religion.
Okay, that might be a fair one. There is a lot of religion. People do play this a lot, so this is kind of a bad example. Fine. Bone Thugs and Harmony, first of the month.
I'm just saying that they're one of the few bands that I can remember that when I used to listen to that kind of stuff that
Yeah.
didn't have kind of horrible lyrics, like horrible in the sense of marketability to like most markets. And their one sort of restricting quality was that it's kind of religious, and religious stuff doesn't get played.
Yeah, no, but again, Crossroads does get some play.
According to the white supremacy, black, racism.
Yeah, see, it's too cut and dry under the theory that you've laid out. And
Well, a second ago you were saying there's institutional racism.
it
preventing
does
these individuals.
exist. And I'm
Okay,
not saying
so
it's really...
point it out.
There's way...
Just point it out. Point it out. Just point it out.
All right. If you have a hair that looks a bit too fro-y, you're gonna have a harder time getting a job.
Mm-hmm.
Or
So if you don't comb your hair,
look, it's more based on culture than it is on race.
okay.
There's
So you're saying institutional racism is where?
culture based. in cities.
Okay. So then you should be able to provide examples.
Well, I just did, and you keep on throwing them out.
I'm asking you, did this person brush their hair? Because when they brush their hair, it doesn't look too froey.
But you keep on bringing up the subject that this person should change the way that they are.
You mean they should make themselves more palatable to society like everybody? You don't roll out of
Or
bed.
these
in your
people
pajamas.
what you're more saying is these people should make themselves more white to be presentable to society.
So, in that concept, you have suggested that the appropriate thing, I guess, the thing that a person should do in a society is white, right?
Yes, generally.
Okay. Murdering another person, basically for their shoes, is not something society does, right?
Correct.
So that is more black.
No, I'm not going to go that route.
Well, you just said that the society finds it inappropriate to murder someone for their shoes.
No, see, you're taking it to way too of an extreme of
What
an
do you mean?
example. I'm more talking like styles, fashions, things like that.
Okay. So
Well, how about this? All right, if I mouth off to a cop
Mhm.
or reach into an inappropriate place, you know what's going to happen? The cop's going to say, "Stop it."
Maybe.
Believe me, it's what happens. I've been mouthy with cops before. I don't get bugged.
Oh, okay. Okay. You've been mouthy with cops before.
Yes.
Okay.
What
Okay.
happens
kind
to
of stuff?
you when you get mouthy with cops?
I don't get mouthy with cops.
No, I do. I mean, I'm not terrible. I'm not terrible, but I'm more like, making fun of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. But the next time you consider that, you should look up the statistics on how many white people die by by being shot by police.
Oh, here, we can do that real quick.
Yeah. Put up a little comparison of who dies more, white people or black people, or Mexicans or Asians. Hint, hint, it's white people. Do you know why? Because no one investigates.
Here, hold on. Okay. 613 people have been shot and killed by police in 2018.
2000 what?
18.
Go to 2017. The year's already closed for that.
Hold on. Let me see here. Let me see if they got numbers here for black versus white. They have names, but it doesn't look like they're actually.
If you go to the type in FBI crime statistics or police shooting statistics, 2000, you have to go to a year that's already closed because they'll compile the data for that. So 2016,
I'll go
that'll
to
be done.
2017. Yeah.
I don't know if they've compiled that data yet. I don't know, but I know that 16's done. I think I did some paper on that like a while ago, but yeah.
There are 41 shootings with verified locations that. God, will they just
Sorry, repeat
show that? There's nothing there about what we're talking about.
Okay,
Washington Post is terrible for this. Statistica.com.
No, don't go to the Washington Post.
I know. Well, it's the first thing that
Type-
pops up on Google search. It ain't my fault
Type
they're
into
liberals.
Google FBI crime statistics.
Okay,
police
well, here.
shootings.
I got Statistica up, okay? For
Do you have
2017 and 2018 by race, okay?
Okay.
So in 2017, 457 white people were shot.
Okay.
And black people were black people were 223.
So more white people were shot by police.
Yes.
But the interesting thing is that there should be far less black people shot by the police.
Yeah, there is. It's about half.
Right. No. But the problem is, okay, do you know how many or how the representation of black people in the statistical sense? Like I think it's about 12% of the population, maybe 13.
Let me see 2016 here. Yeah, you're right. It should be. 12 points African Americans, 12.7%. Yeah, about 13%. Wow, you got that almost exactly right. You said you just did a paper on that, didn't you?
The paper was a while ago. But anyways, the whole point of the white supremacy is that the disparity that you're seeing. So that number, the 4,000,
Mm-hmm.
you said 4,000, right? For white people?
No, 457.
Okay, 457. So 457 should represent 75% or so of the population as white people, and then everyone else should be nowhere near that, or at least
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that white people commit a lion's share of the crimes in the United States. I think it's followed by immigrants or white people. I can't remember,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the problem. Black people essentially commit more crime, have more interactions with the police, and ultimately have less respect for the police when it comes to their sort of deadly
So
potential.
do you think it's an upbringing issue on the other side of things, on the black side?
I couldn't say. I think it's personal decisions. I can't put the finger on one thing. I know that in my limited experience in the black community, being raised by black parents, or sorry, two black women, that it promoted the idea that the police were not to be respected. Yeah.
All right, this seems like a good point for final thoughts on this.
Okay, essentially, white supremacy is bullshit.
very, very simple and to the point. I like that.
Yeah, it infuriates me.
I don't think it's complete bullshit, but I think it takes away from the real conversations we should be having, and that's how to mitigate racism, period, not just on one side or the other. I mean, white people aren't the only ones that need to be fixed in this sense.
May I add one point?
Yeah.
Racism is something that is eternal, okay? This is one thing that white supremacy gets correct. Racism will never end. Do you know why?
Because no matter what, people are always going to see people as being different.
No, because people are different. And when people are divided by tribe, they will have tendencies to do similar things that their tribes are. For as long as white people are successful being, I guess, if you want to call it white, I call it American. So the commonality that bonds us together is what we are willing to do for each other. And if that means wear a suit to get a job, whether I'm black or white or whatever, I'll do it, because that's a sign that I'm willing to participate in our community.